All right. This is the Bill DeMott Experience. I'm Jeff Townsend. Bill DeMott, of course, is with me. It wouldn't be the Bill DeMott Experience without him. Bill, I'm drinking a Prime energy drink.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that drink?
I like, as you can hear, the Townsend dog is very upset and letting it be known by now by barking.
I can't hear her, really.
Oh, well, she doesn't like Prime, I guess, but I do. I like the popsicle flavor one, like the red, white, and blue one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, is that like a bomb pop? Is that what it used to be called? The bomb
pop?
Pop?
You know, like them, those like popsicles that are like red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
That are good. Yeah, that's what it's flavored like. I'm drinking a blue raspberry right now.
Prime, a Prime energy drink. Isn't that Logan Paul?
You got it. Yep. And this was was this the caller of the what you thought was a crayon that went to the announce table at WrestleMania?
Yes.
The blue crayon, you called it, before I was quick to remind you that it was actually Prime Energy Drink sponsorship.
The crayon. Oh, God.
We're not getting paid, by the way, for Prime. That's just some free plug there, I guess, because I'm thirsty. Anyways, Bill, you said the family's been out and about.
Yeah.
See a new Nike bag in the background, but
yeah,
we just informed it's not new Nikes.
Wild week. I thought I had a gift when I came home, and it's just my wife, as many moms do. My wife will save most bags from her shopping experiences, and because she knows she'll always use a bag for something. But sometimes I come home, I see a Nike bag, I go, oh, and there's nothing in it. But it's just a bag that's been saved. Yeah, wild week. I was in New Jersey. We spoke the foundation. We spoke with the 165th recruit class from the New Jersey State Troopers. Awesome experience. But I drove up Monday, 17 hours straight through. Finally got to bed, woke up the next day, spoke to the recruits, got up on Wednesday morning at 5 a.m., drove 17 hours home because first thing this morning I had we had a presentation in Apopka, Florida for the youth academy, the public youth academy. So the foundation's been busy, and then Mama and the boy were in Nashville for New Balance. We talked about his baseball outings, and so he was in a national combine for the 2027 class in the United States, and he was out there with 180 other young men, and we're waiting to hear if he gets picked up to make that fresh 50.
Oh.
So if he makes the fresh 50, if he makes the cut, if the scouts and the organization choose him, if New Balance picks him up, he will be one of 50 to represent the United States for New Balance in September.
You might see a New Balance bag sitting around.
So we throw Nike out the window. That happens. I'll have an empty New Balance bag behind me.
Well, it's a pretty big size bag, so I was thinking it was his size 16 shoes.
Yeah, I tell you, man, I think his feet are still growing too. Like I have 13s. He's at 12 and a half, but he keeps growing. So
I'm at 10 and a half, so you guys both have me beat. How tall is he?
He's 6'1".
And you're 6, are you 6'1"?
I'm 6'1", yeah.
Is he taller than you yet?
Yeah, I think he's got me now. I know he'll have me in the next 6 months. So I keep with I give the threatening looks in there. I try to intimidate him, but he knows, big teddy bear, you're not going to do nothing to me. So he's got me figured. Well, you got girls, they got you figured out, man. We don't have any stroke anymore. Sometimes they humor us and okay, Dad, but they got us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
How was your week?
That's not a bad week. Been busy, trying to get a bunch of work done because I have a project in Texas. Not next week, which is the Hall of Fame week. We forgot to bring that up, but the week after I'll be in Texas. Won't be able to make the Hall of Fame this year.
I'm gonna miss you, man.
Yeah, I know. I would say everyone's going to miss me, but you're the only one that's going to miss me there.
Well, I feel like I'm everyone.
There you go. There's a couple people there I've interacted with via video, Conrad Thompson, etc., that I would have liked to meet in person, but maybe one day.
Yeah, exciting. We leave for that. We leave for that next week. We're actually, you and I have discussed it. I'm a driver. I love to drive this country. Did it for 30 years on the road. I love to drive it. So the family, we're to get in the Mini Cooper, and we're gonna head on down the highway.
Maybe I'll just pay for the ticket, and I'll just live out of the old Honda Accord, the Honda Accord Sport that I have. like the days on the road, right? Like territory days. I can do that.
Just pull up to the venue and just sleep till they come and knock on the door and go, "We're open." Exactly.
That's a thought. I've actually never been to Iowa, so that's one state I have not been to Iowa, man. What state have you not? Is there a state you haven't been to, Bill?
No, off my list is every state. I've wrestled in every state in the country, including Alaska and Hawaii. More than once. I made my rounds in the states. I've been at least in every state 2 times. So that is awesome. What's cool about that is you talk to a lot of the guys and the girls that have been, in the industry for a long time, and they'll still tell you there's certain states they've never worked in. So that's like, forget leaving the country. Like, it's so cool the places I've been, but it's pretty cool to be in every state in the country and work there and seeing some things.
Yeah. That's one cool thing you could say about, well, my dad was a truck driver, so he could say the same except for Hawaii. Yeah. But he actually visited Alaska because I had an uncle that lived there for a while. But no, lower 48, my dad being a truck driver, he had been through up and down the roads and all over the place.
Yeah.
I actually have a knife that I have because in Chicago, south side of Chicago, lovely place. Somebody jumped on the side of a semi and tried to put a knife through the window, and he rolled their arm up in the window.
So You're kidding me.
No. I actually remember this because I actually found the knife this week in the garage. So I was like, oh, this is that knife.
Holy cow. Yeah, the south side. Interesting.
Yeah, kind of stuck in traffic in a semi. There's not much you can do, is there?
God. I'm just picturing someone jumping up through the window with a knife. That's all.
All sorts. Just like you have stories about wrestling on the road, truck drivers have. See, I have a podcast called Just Jeff. It's like a comedy podcast. And there's an episode where I talked to a fella that's a truck driver buddy of mine they call him the Traveling Bard. And he has some stories for the ages also. But these truck drivers, man, they're up there with pro wrestling stories.
Yeah, they've seen it all too. Yeah, I'm sure there's. Yeah, I probably know him.
Yeah,
we probably met somewhere down the line.
Yeah, maybe cross paths. I didn't even know. So, Bill, last time we recorded, we talked about Money in the Bank, Forbidden Door.
Yeah.
But now it's time to jump back into the United States Championship discussion. Part 3, I believe. Yeah, we're on part 3 already. We're on fire, man.
This is golden.
Where we left off, we'll paint the picture here. We brought up the scenario where Bill Goldberg defeats Raven in a Ravens Rules match on April 20th, 1998. Things are rolling around pretty well at this time for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Goldberg, obviously, we know his title reign was limited because, as we've talked about many times, or a few instances so far in this discussion, with that victory later on that he had with the United States Championship, came the vacated the title of the United States, the United States Championship.
Right.
So yeah, Bill Goldberg gets the big title, and he vacates the United States champion. I said big title. That sounded degrading. You know what I meant. I'm thinking big. It's the big belt, literally.
Large.
It's
the big large title. Yes.
Yeah. So Bill gets
I knew what
that.
you meant, so I wasn't offended by it.
Okay. I call that the big belt.
The big belt.
I need to get one of those hanging up in the studio. But yeah, so the title's vacated in Atlanta, Georgia on July 6, 1998. That's they consider that the vacated date, the day that he won the actual championship, even though I think he came out. There wasn't like a big ordeal about it when he vacated the title either. We had, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was another instance where this happened earlier in our episode with a particular champion. I don't remember who it was, but it's not uncommon back then where you vacated the title when you won another one.
Right. But this one, to your point, it was kind of dismissed, right? It wasn't even that didn't matter because the bigger picture was he won the big belt.
Yeah. The rival with NWO, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Definitely not. That title really, when you got past the Raven moments, didn't have much with Bill Goldberg, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. It helped with the storyline of the flock and everything, but after that, it did its job for Bill Goldberg, and it was just kind of on Bill Goldberg. It wasn't really talked about because, like you said, Bill Goldberg was a part of something bigger, obviously.
Yeah, and the shame of it is, and I think we're getting into it now, this is where and we talked about it in the other episodes, this is where that title is now definitely treated as something that's very secondary, not as important. No matter where it was going, it wasn't considered a big deal to be the U.S. champion.
Yeah, and like I think one of the things I stated before we ended recording was this is really the last time in its existence on WCW that at this point on, it's never going to be a reign more than 3 months, not even 3 months.
Right.
So we're going to get into some twists and turns here as we finish up the WCW days of this championship, but some good stuff on the back end we'll get to. Okay. We'll go ahead and go. So like I just said, title was vacated. Back Salt Lake City, Bill.
Salt Lake City.
July 20th, 1998, Bret Hart defeats Diamond Dallas Page for the vacated championship. So Bret Hart, and we mentioned Bret Hart a little bit as we wrapped up the episode.
Yeah.
Bret Hart's brought in too long after he's doing this. And later on in this discussion, I don't know, what do you got going on there? You got the Hurricane Bill?
Was a funny, alarm clock. It's of course it's me. I'm professional. It's my phone. I'm going to shut that off.
Mine's going off the whole time. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm a professional. I might shut that off.
We're professionals here, guys.
Professionals.
Just look at Bill's work area. So Bret Hart has the championship. He's back. He's in WCW. So we'll talk about Bret Hart a whole lot more on this podcast, as we already have.
Yes.
What was it like when he came in, man? Obviously, he came in on a piss poor note on WWF end with the Montreal screw job, as famously talked about. But what was it like for you guys when he got there?
I thought it was very anticlimactic when Bret became part of the company. The initial thought, and again, my perspective on it is, as being there, is the initial thought was, okay, that's freaking awesome. This is going to be, anytime something was going to give a jump start to things, you were looking forward to it. And even if it didn't necessarily, I knew when Bret Hart came in, it wasn't going to affect my trajectory, my career, let's say, but the company should have got a big boost out of it. It should have been a bigger deal. But I felt like
how long before, sorry to cut you off, how long before he showed up did you know he was going to show up? Day of?
When he did the wrote WCW in the air, you knew he was coming. That you knew he wasn't.
Were you watching that when it happened, or
oh yeah,
do you remember?
Yeah, we were notorious for, and the same thing with them. They were watching our shows, and we were watching their shows.
You always hear that Vince McMahon never was, though. Do you believe that? He's kind of in his own world.
Yeah, I believe that Vince himself never watched our shows, but I know he got reports about what was going on in the shows.
Oh yeah, I mean, Bruce Pritchard and all. Bruce Pritchard talks about how he would watch him in the hotel late, but yeah, Vince McMahon himself just in his own
I believe
world.
Vince never really watched the shows. He didn't really. It wasn't his thing. He had an agenda. That's all he was gearing for.
This is a guy that watched no movies either. You always hear the story about Razor Ramon's character and some of the references in it, and he had no clue.
No idea. Well, I'll tell you a funny, we're going to go off track here, but I'm going to tell you a funny story about a conversation I had with Vince and the one and only one of the greatest coaches in my mind in wrestling, Jerry Briscoe. Jerry Briscoe was my agent at the time when they were still called agents. I was very fortunate in my career for the people that were my agents. Jerry Briscoe is my agent. Jerry comes and gets me and says, Vince wants to see us. I went, oh boy. So Vince, Jerry and I walk the other side of the arena. We find Vince's office. We go in, and I'll try to make this very short. Vince sits down. He's very, very stoic. Three of us are sitting in like a little circle in chairs. You know what we need? We need a guy that can make people laugh and then rip their heads off. Jerry, we need a guy that can be funny and make the people laugh and at a turn of a hat become a villain and beat the hell out of somebody. That's what we need. Jerry, you agree? Yes, sir, Vince. And here's, oh, by the way, here's Hugh Morris sitting in the chair going, okay, think we can do something like that? Find someone who could make people laugh and then be a killer. I'm telling you, when I sat in that chair, I was waiting for like 8 people to jump out of different spots and go, ah, ha, ha, you're being punked. Long story short, Jerry and I sat there, agreed with Vince. Okay, that's the way Bill DeMott was told. That's his new direction. Let's find a way to be, and then, but when the bell rings, you go and kick the crap out of people.
Was this so no laughing matter?
Yeah. So I waited till we were on the other side of the arena, and I stopped and I went, Mr. Briscoe, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And Jerry looked at me and went, I don't know. He's like, but we have to do it. Literally that night, I had a writer come up to me with knock-knock jokes. Here's a series of knock-knock jokes we want you to try. Anyway, so when you're saying, does Vince watch things? That was my character for 7 years before you hired me. And then you kind of had that taken away, but then he wanted it back. So it just brought me back to that conversation of, yeah, I don't think he really watches a lot of things except the product. You know what I mean?
Was he like real into it too? I'll tell you what we.
Oh, you can walk in there, and someone used this analogy years ago. You can walk in there, you know what you're going to say. You're going to stick to your guns, and you're going in there like a zebra. You're coming out with spots and polka dots. I always use Dusty Rhodes as the example. You're going in there sticking to your guns. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. Stay with me, and you're going to come out, and you're going to be, and that was it. You came out. I came out motivated, but then I had to wait till, a little clarity and go, that's kind of what I do. But then it's one of the things. Now that he sees that vision, now you do it. So anyway, Bret Hart was, I feel it was anticlimactic. It didn't have that big name feel to it when he was there. I'm not sure, and I can't speak for Bret. I've heard a lot of his interviews about it and stuff and how he felt about the company, and actually when he got there, what he thought it was going to be and what it was. I don't really feel like he came in gung-ho. I think he got the feeling early on, and that, not knowing his business conversations, but it wasn't it wasn't the buildup as like everybody else had been the buildup and the, even in front of the crowd. Yeah. So him becoming U.S. champion felt like a big, slap in the face kind of thing, I feel like.
All right. I can understand why you would think that he would probably feel that way. Also, probably not in the best of moods the way everything played out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine, at least. So we'll jump back into where we left off here. So Bret Hart's the champion for just 3 weeks. Then Lex Luger defeats him on Nitro on August 10th, 1998 in Rapid City. Just holds it for a few days till Monday comes back around. Then Bret Hart is now the champion again. And Bret Hart holds it for 74 days. Then he is defeated by Diamond Dallas Page on October 26, 1988 on a Nitro. Turn around 4 weeks later, Bret Hart defeats Diamond Dallas Page for the title in Nitro in Chattanooga, Tennessee on November 30th. This was a no disqualification match. So we had a Diamond Dallas Page, Bret Hart thing going on for a few months here.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
With some Lex Luger sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, this is going along with what we had talked about happens with this title. Now that Nitro is full force up and going, this is defended all the time on Nitro. We segued to that in the last episode, and that's exactly what we're starting to see here. Okay, so 70-day reign, February 8th, 1999, Buffalo, New York on Nitro. Roddy Piper is the new champion. What do you remember about Piper during this time period in WCW?
Loved it. He was great to have around.
Was this your first role experience around him too much?
Yeah, a couple of times elsewhere outside of WCW, but I've never been in the ring and worked with him, but I was fortunate enough to have some conversations. He was always very social, very willing to drop the knowledge and have a conversation or just shoot the breeze with you. But I think at the same time there, look at it, and it's not a knock, but look at, you have Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, Lex Luger, and Diamond Dallas Page. Knowing that nothing's going to happen with them at the top of the ladder, now they're trying to create, and this is what was happening at this time. They were trying to create buzz outside the buzz of the NWO and things like that. And to me, it just was flat every time. Because I think as a fan and as people looked at it, that's Bret Hart. Wrestling fans who came over from WWE to watch him in WCW were not happy. People that saw Hot Rod were not happy. And it's not to say that Dallas and Lex, but Dallas and Lex were WCW guys. And so I think that's where the trade-off kept coming. Let's give it to the guys that are not gonna be on the upper tier. All upper tier players. So you would think in hindsight that this US championship now would mean more. But it was just being ping-ponged.
It gets ping-ponged again, man, because 13 days later at Super Brawl, Scott Hall is the new champion on February 21st, 1999.
Yeah. And it's the thing now. The only thing is now it's defended only on TV because all of those names had a very restricted schedule. They didn't make a lot of live events and house shows. So it wasn't like, and that's why I say it wasn't like it meant much. You know what I mean? So it's just ping-ponged around. Okay, who else do we have to put it on? I think I can only speak for it now looking back at it. Maybe the thing was if we put on enough big-name guys, it'll mean something. But it didn't. I think it watered it down because it was just something that was passed around.
Yeah. Well, Scott Hall only holds it for 25 days and it's vacated. He was stripped of it because, this is when Ric Flair, the WCW president, I'm doing quotation marks there, stripped him of the title. So another short reign. And it sounds like a lot, but that was literally just 2 months, I think, we covered.
Yeah, it's fun. Look how much happened in that 2 months.
But it was happening. That was wrestling then, though, Bill. It wasn't just this title.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
You could turn it to the other channel and you'd see a lot of this sort of thing. I mean, not very long matches and title change frequently. It was just kind of the way wrestling was during this time period for a while.
Yeah. The U.S. championship, I think, was the equivalent of their hardcore championship. It was always being passed around and
Wow. Wow.
Was that out loud?
That thing did change a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That hardcore championship, I always loved the story on it. It was like a joke when he gave Mick Foley that taped up, crappy looking title. Yeah.
But it became iconic.
He's so good, it became so much more. But
yes.
Do you remember? I remember that segment when he handed it to, when he had that title handed to him.
What the hell is that?
Of course, he sold it right. Oh, right. You know, like, and then it grew legs.
Yeah, because when he dug it, everybody dug it. He treated it like it was that was it.
Yeah. Yep. Not a name that we've been brought up in any of this title discussion either. So he was in and out of WCW, but it would have been cool to have him on a list of this and brought it up, but did not happen. Okay. Your guy, Scott Steiner, defeated Booker T in the tournament final for the vacated, obviously the title just vacated, like we said, at Spring Stampede, April 11th, 1999. Scott Steiner.
Big pump now, right? Yeah.
We had Aiden ask about Scott Steiner, I think, last week, the listener Aiden. Yeah. So, Scott Steiner's got the belt, man.
And if I'm not wrong, this is when it starts to get interesting again. I think Scott was the right for me, like as a fan and as someone there, Scott was the right guy for it. Because he was everywhere. He was going to be everywhere with it. I think him and Booker had some, good bangers anyway. I think
the next Scott Hall title reign, which is about a year away, is when we start. It changes quite a bit until then, but that's when we started seeing Lance Storm.
Yeah,
Terry Funk came by for a cup of coffee with the title. You're involved, so this is Scott Hall's previous run at it. What we're going to get to here, but Scott Hall holds the title for. Let's see here. Lost my spot. Okay, no, I said Scott Hall. I don't know why I said Scott Hall. I said Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner, dang it.
Oh, you know what's terrible is I know exactly what you mean, so I didn't even catch on to that. I didn't even realize you said Scott Hall.
Okay, so then again, I don't know what I said. I meant Scott Steiner, of course. Scott Steiner is the champion for 85 days after he defeats Booker T. Then he is stripped of the title by Ric Flair on a Nitro on July 5th, 1995. And that same night, David Flair is awarded the title by his father, Ric Flair. What do you remember about David Flair getting in the picture and David Flair in WCW?
He was timid. He was trying to keep his head above water. And I say that respectfully. Look who his father is. You can't live up to that. But when he came in, there were so many naysayers because it's his boy. Okay, now he's taking TV time. This is when the horns come out of the grizzled veterans in the back who aren't getting TV time, and guys that have been there for longer than a cup of coffee trying to get involved. And now David's in. Don't get me wrong, David's a great. At that time, he's a great kid. David's a good man. I think a lot of David, but I think it was just a lot thrown at him. I think he handled it the best he could at the time because, and I'll say it openly, he was rotten. You had to tell him what his father's finish was. He wasn't a fan of the business, no matter who your father, if you're not a fan of the business, then you don't get it. But Rick came in, made a statement there, boom, his kid's U.S. champion.
Yeah. Storyline driven, obviously. Right.
Yeah.
Not by that's strictly what it was. Now let's take a flip side of that. The other company here, does Shane McMahon have that different scenario? I realize not apples to apples exactly, but does Shane McMahon have that kind of heat even, or is he more in with the boys? I already know the answer.
Shane was and is one of the boys. Shane cared. Shane understood the business. Shane wanted in the worst way to always be there. Unfortunately, he's very good at business and the other things he did. So, he was in and out. But when he had that schedule where he was there full time, Shane was in. He didn't come back and bark and tell people what they were going to do. Like, he was in the conversation. And when he was involved in those matches and even in the back, he knew who everybody was, what they did, how they did it, how to move. He was training on his own anyway. But Shane was one of the boys. I mean, I understand he's the boss. At the time, he was the boss's son, and he was a boss, but he was one of the boys. There was a big difference there.
And there's not a thing he was afraid to do, I don't think.
Nothing. I defy anyone who's ever worked for the McMahon family to find one of the McMahons that wouldn't do what they asked someone else to do. I defy them.
You always hear that story about Gronk, Rob Gronkowski with Vince McMahon at that balcony.
At the Performance Center, yep.
Yeah, Vince McMahon going on 80 years old, and
Second story drop.
Shane's a perfect example of that. Shane's like a whole other level. Vince is too, right? Falling off of a cage through an announce table when you're, crazy stuff. But
a whole different level Shane is. Big Shane McMahon.
I just wanted to bring up that comparison.
Yeah, big. But that's the thing. Like, here's a kid, same thing. But Shane grew up in the business. David didn't. Does that make sense? Like, David, his dad was famous. Vince McMahon was the owner.
Different family dynamic.
Different family dynamic.
What was going on with the Flair family, maybe behind the scenes.
Yes.
Much different.
Yeah. Shane grew up in the business.
Shane was always there. Yeah. I'm sure Shane was always there.
Always there.
Yeah. And you always hear the story about how he was, when he started out with the company, they had him working in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Kind of learned the ropes like all the way around.
From the bottom up. Shane. And same with Steph.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Same with Steph.
Okay, so let's get back to the story here.
Okay.
35-day reign, then he loses it to Chris Benoit on Nitro in Boise, Idaho on August 9th, 1999.
Yeah. And that's I think the buildup of, I'm trying to remember that, is it made David a little more legitimate being in the ring with Benoit. But if you're going to do it, Benoit's naturally going to take it, because here's that time in that timeline. This is when everything's going down now. This is when the rumors are starting. And so what are we going to do now to really jumpstart this company past the NWO stuff? Because clearly there needs to be more stuff being done. And then there we go.
Chris Benoit holds the title for 34 days. Sid Vicious defeats him at Fall Brawl, September 12th, 1999, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Sid Vicious is even getting in on this, man.
Yeah, now everybody, and remember the timeline you're giving. Remember the dates, and if people put it back together and look, okay, so we're talking about 99, right? And then in 2001, in the early 2001, it's over. So this is now think of how many different bookers there have been in the process of this championship. Yeah, Bischoff was there 6 months. He was out. Russo was in for 6 months. He was out. Sullivan was back 6 months. He was out. Bischoff was back. He was, so the players kept changing according to who was booking.
Yeah. Sid Vicious, though, decorated career.
Yeah.
What was he like? What was it like being around him?
I thought he was great, man. I think he was just a gigantic country boy who was really, he was really cool. I had a good time with Sid. I know his thing was, a lot of people said wrestling wasn't his thing. It was softball. That was his love. So when when he had that time of the year when it was softball season, he was a little less visual. But I love Sid. I thought he was great.
A career still that's decorated.
Yeah. And he's a giant of a man too, but he's like, to me, he's like a big teddy bear. But he was, and I think that goes for a lot of us though, right? If you're with the right people, you can be yourself. And when you had to be that persona, you were that persona. But I like Sid, never had an issue. Never had an issue with Sid.
And it's like that chatting with you. You're not the Bill DeMott that you read about on the dirt sheets.
The ruffian.
Even. Yeah.
My reputation doesn't precede me.
Yeah. You're being too hard on yourself. Damn it, Bill. We'll move on. You're making me sad.
It will. I'll come out.
42-day reign. Bill Goldberg gets the title on Halloween Havoc, October 24th of 99. So by this time, fast forward a couple years after his initial, not even a couple years, actually, year and a half, I think,
right
after his first shot at this title. I don't want to say Bill Goldberg's out of the picture because he's not completely, but things have shifted a little bit in WCW. And like you said, the wheels of the bus that go round and round aren't going round and round too well anymore. Yeah. They're starting to get a little wobbly. You know how you watch that car on the interstate that drives by you and you're like,
yeah, it's missing a lug nut. Yeah. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. So Bill doesn't have this title this time long. It's less than a day. So he won the title because Sid Vicious suffered excessive bleeding and the referee stopped the match. Bret Hart's the champion a day later on the 25th in Phoenix, Arizona. He holds it for 2 weeks. Scott Hall defeats him on Nitro in Indianapolis, Indiana on November 8th, 1999. This is a 41-day reign. So the Scott Hall, when he wins it, if I remember correctly, this was a ladder match. Okay. That has Sid Vicious and Bill Goldberg in it also. What? You're shaking your head because the same reason I am. For
everybody who can't see me, I'm literally just sitting here shaking my head.
When I think of a ladder match, no offense to either one of those two gentlemen, I don't think about Sid Vicious and Bill Goldberg.
Why would you? Why would you even? And here's the bad thing about it is I'm pretty sure those two men didn't think about it much either. There was no investment in it. It was I don't know. It was kind of like I said, there was a lot of booking changes and a lot of ideas being thrown around and guys were doing things. And even if they didn't agree with it, they had to do it because everybody was trying to keep their jobs and keep those paychecks and things like that. But a lot of the thing, and to be honest, I've completely forgot that Bill even beat Sid to become champion. Sid. I mean, and I forgot that Bret came back again for it. That's how it's going to sound bad, right? That's how unimportant it was at that time. It was just, let's do stuff, and let's do stuff. And at least it's important to people if we put a title around it while we do it.
Yeah. I remember this time period. I was just getting to the teenage years. So that's when you really, I remember wrestling pretty well from then. And this is a time definitely when it just was not quite as meaningful, to be honest. Yeah. And the next couple of situations are up there with that. So we just talked about Indianapolis, Indiana victory. Chris Benoit at Starrcade, December 19th, 1999, is awarded the title when Scott Hall suffered a knee injury during the match. He holds the title until the following evening. There's a ladder match that takes place, and Double J, Jeff Jarrett, is United States Championship. His champion.
Yep. Bookers, people in charge, head of the writers. My guy's coming in.
What? Yeah, I get what you're saying. What was the thought on Jeff Jarrett coming in after that WWF, famous fallout he had with Vince McMahon?
I think Jeff had a great run with us. I had the opportunity. I met Jeff on a few independents early on before I went to Japan and stuff. And Jeff gave me some great advice when I was younger, and I held on to that. So, listen, you can't, I don't think we can ever say that Jeff isn't relevant in wrestling history. I thought he was good when he came in. I thought he did great business, the things he was involved in. I don't want to say he was a victim of booking, but everybody went with their guys, Who do I trust? Who do I want to do business with? So at that time, the lines were being drawn in so many different directions that, again, I don't think it really mattered what anybody else thought. It's just whoever was running the show, this is what we're going to do. And they wanted to do it with the guys that would go with their program.
Yeah. Yep. He was awarded going back to this here, it was a ladder match we talked about. Title was vacated 27 days later. Jeff Jarrett suffered an injury. And then a day after that was at a pay-per-view. A day after that on Nitro on January 17, 2000, he was awarded the championship by Commissioner Kevin Nash. This is when Kevin Nash was, that's what he was doing with WCW at that point in time. What do you remember about Kevin Nash, that little bit of a transitional phase?
Yeah. The funny thing about Big Kev was he has a mind like a steel trap. So he remembers things that have been said and things that were done. And
oh yeah,
when he had the opportunity, he could put it to you, put you in a spot that wasn't very favorable or something like that. And here's the greatest example I can give you. Knobs and I were working against Malenko. Was it Malenko? I think it was Malenko and Benoit, or Malenko and Shane Douglas, or something like that. And we took the fall on Dean because they didn't feel like they should be in the ring with us. We weren't of the same caliber and all these things. And that's when like, well, guess what? Guess what's going to happen tonight? And somewhere in the record books around that time, Hugh Morris and Brian Knobs beat Dean Malenko. I think I beat Dean right in the middle, 1, 2, 3.
Going back to Jeff Jarrett, big Jeff Jarrett fan. I loved.
Yes,
I loved it all. I liked the WWF stuff too, and I always remember that song that he had. But finding out years later that Road Dogg was the one singing the song.
How great is that? How great is that?
Yeah, it is great. I remember that music video. I can picture it in my head, the bar scenes and all
perfectly.
They had a hell of a
perfectly done, right? You would thought all that time you thought he sang that song.
I agree. You really did. And I sometimes I still get I need to go back and listen to that song again. I think I'd get a kick out of it.
It's great.
But no, I'm a big Jeff. I think Jeff Jarrett has a great wrestling mind.
Yeah,
and he's
amazing.
He's still at it today, man. He's still sharing that knowledge, and he's still, first of all, physically, he is in great shape.
Performing.
And he's still having great matches.
Yeah.
And you know what he gives behind the scenes is amazing too.
Yeah. Yeah. Big fan of Jeff Jarrett.
So yeah, we talked about Kevin Nash there. Also a big Kevin Nash fan. I think that when you think of, you ask the average casual wrestling fan, a couple people they think about when they hear WCW, he's going to be one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Kev, besides being a giant of a man, a monument of a man, he was brilliant enough to always stay relevant. He knew the business. That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understood about Kevin if they weren't paying attention. He was a really good businessman. And I'm talking about if you, I feel like for me, and I only talk about my experiences and my opinion. For me, if you dealt with him, which I had lots of opportunities to deal with him and work with him in the ring and speak to him outside the ring and things like that. If you wanted to do business, he did great business. But if you wanted to play the game, he played the game better than no one else. But I'm a big fan of Big Kev. Was then, am now.
Yep, I listen to the podcast on a regular basis that they do. Him and Sean, been listening to Sean Oliver stuff forever. So
yeah,
he's like the when I think of wrestling shoot interviews, I think of Honky Tonk Man. And I think of him back in the day, Sean Oliver. So yeah, they do good work now.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so we just talked about what happened there. All the WCW titles on April 20th on Nitro 2000, Denver, Colorado. All the WCW titles were declared vacant by Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. This is WCW's attempt, like one of the last fighting attempts here at a reboot.
Right.
Of the company. Do you remember this happening?
I didn't remember it was in Denver
clean the
or anything like
slates.
that. Yeah. But this is it. We're going to light the world on fire. We're going to start fresh and everybody's going to get along in the back and kumbaya, creative. We're all shooting for the same thing here because we know we're going out of business. This is. Were
you guys sold on this? Was this a valiant effort to gather the troops?
No, because if you've been there, and again, I can't speak for a lot of the guys, but if you've been there and you had tenure there, you've seen this before. You've heard the rah-rah before, and then you've seen the outcome right after the rah-rah speech. Never mind a day later, a month later, you saw it happening right in front of you. So I think the attempt was more in front of the camera because behind the camera, there wasn't a lot of people buying into it.
There's a lot said about Vince Russo and how much of an impact did he really have in WWF? My opinion, he obviously had a lot.
Yeah.
But when he came in, he was kind of brought in with a bag of turd on that already been lit here. I'm not sure. You could call a lot of the stuff you did questionable here. We talked about David Arquette, etc. But Vince Russo really didn't stand a fighting chance no matter what he was going to do.
Right.
In this company at this point.
Right. Yeah. He came into a sinking ship. To his side of it, I think he was trying, man. You know, listen, everybody was complaining about him bringing in David Arquette, but Vince Russo wasn't the one who made Buff Bagwell's mom tag team champion years earlier. So what was the difference? The only difference was WCW was going under now, and now they had a different poster boy to pin it on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because there was still some goofy crap that was going on for years. So, but Arquette brought eyes and people to the dance. No matter how you felt about it, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to bring it back to where people were talking about it, you know?
Let's talk about this. People love or hate Vince Russo. He was a Bill DeMott fan.
Yeah.
You're always called a jobber, right? Yeah. We've joked about it before. It's on your Wikipedia page, even. In the first couple sentences. But Vince Russo was on board with the work that you were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I think when they first started, Vince and Ed Ferrara and Billy, when they first came in, I want to say we were in Philadelphia. I could be wrong. I'm trying to think of the area we were in. But anyway, he took time to meet people. Everybody, naturally knew Booker. Everybody wanted to run up and, get their noses deep into them as they could. And, hey, loved your stuff there and this and that. And I just simply introduced myself. And he told me, he goes, nope, I know who you are. And Vince and I come from the same place in Brooklyn, Johnny Rodz. Vince Russo trained with Johnny Rodz. It was a couple years after I was already out and about. But, yeah, he knew who I was. And he told me, and without remembering exact words, told me to hang in there. Something, they're trying to make things happen. Okay. I'd been there long enough to know that, one, I had my job. Two, I was still getting opportunities. And other than that, I was working every live event there was. So I was always on the road and always working. I think it would have been different if I was sitting home, and not getting, but I'm a Vince Russo fan as the man. As a guy I know outside of wrestling, but Vince Russo gave me the opportunity, as we're going to talk about coming up, to really put some steam behind everything I was trying to do for the previous 6 years.
And these are relationships that last forever, a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously there's going to be falling outs and stuff, but in your case of Vince Russo, when you got into podcasting, it was with Vince Russo through Vince Russo. We shared the episode on ours that was originally on the Realm when we got permission to do so, where you had a talk with Vince Russo and he was like, hey man, I know you'd be great at this. And you could tell you guys genuinely have friendship with each other. Yeah.
Because there was no animosity. There was no preconceived notions of how we should get along. And that was always, a lot of people told me that was always my problem. I took everybody at face value. That was the name of my podcast. Everything for me is face value. If you tell me something, I have no reason to doubt you. Let's go that direction. I had no reason to doubt Vince and Ed and what they were doing. I questioned the beginning of it, but they had ideas.
You got your finishing move taken away.
Yeah, Jesus. But
Edge took a moonsault on his side.
They had to, they were trying to juggle. You said it. He walked in to a turd show, and now he's got all the top people, telling them how it's going to go and what they want. And now he's trying to create, momentum and kind of change the atmosphere. So it was, listen, there's not a lot of people who could have taken that spot and made chicken salad out of that. You know what I mean?
We're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but
yeah,
Vince
sorry
Russo,
about that.
No, it's okay. I'll continue it a little bit longer, but Vince Russo has tweeted in the last couple of days, and I don't know how much you can relate. He's a guy that has really struggled with what I don't want to say what he's become, but how everything's kind of played out with pro wrestling and his side of it, you could tell that he struggles with the enjoyment of it, with especially the current brand.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something like when you give so much to something like you did, Bill, and it just things don't end the way you quite thought they would. And obviously it's not over because you both still are fans and involved.
Yeah.
We're talking wrestling right now, but can you relate to, do you get what I'm trying to say with, it seems like the emotional battle he has?
Yes. Because unlike Vince, my battle or any of the other guys on the roster, their battle was as wrestlers. We weren't being blamed for the demise of a company. We weren't being blamed for taking the company that had walked all over WWE for all that time to being the person who is destroying it. If and I know you know this, but that's all Vince Russo heard. You didn't hear Eric in the conversation, or Kevin Sullivan, or anybody else. All you heard was it was Vince Russo was responsible for the demise. And the problem is, once you have fans and people saying it, and you have the boys going out and saying it to people, that's a lot of pressure, man. And it takes your fandom away. It takes your love for it away. And I feel like no matter how creative you are and the people that you did try to do right by, everybody turned on them because that was the topic of conversation. So even a guy who never had an opportunity is going to badmouth Vince Russo because that's the topic and it now makes them relevant. But to me, truth be told, he gave it his all. But he gave it his all while being handcuffed, because I wasn't in WWF at the time, but he had that control, that creative control. Here he had a certain amount of creative control because now there was Harvey Schiller and all these other people involved in these companies that are talking about buying the company and all the things we can and can't do now. So you've kind of handcuffed him. But at the end of the day, to your point, I see where he battles with the business he grew up loving and made a great living at and still talks about, because every once in a while, as any human would do, he gets on social media and just goes on a rant for a little bit. But how much are you supposed to take as a human being before it gets to you? And I say this, thank goodness that he and other people do at least vent, because you hold that stuff in, you're doing a gainer off the roof sooner or later, because it's your life and it gets to you,
Yeah, absolutely. Reset. Let's reset also right now.
Bro, shout out.
Bro, let's reset. Bro. So we just talked about the reset. This is when you start to come into play, and you and others, Bill. This reset happens. Titles are wiped out clear. We're going to go back here. This is the last part of this title in WCW and the last part of WCW.
Yeah.
So we will jump into this here. Where do we leave off here? Vince Russo wipes the slate clean.
Right.
Scott Steiner on April 16th, 2000, Spring Stampede, Chicago, Illinois, defeated Sting in a tournament final for the vacant title. This is the title reign that you're probably referencing with Scott run here. Scott Steiner's reign here. This particular title run.
Right.
So Scott Steiner's in the picture. He has the title for 84 days. It's vacated, Bash at the Beach, July 9th. He was stripped of the title when he used the banned Steiner recliner submission hold on Mike Awesome. We got Mike Awesome in the picture now. He comes over. We're on the ending days of WCW here. Mm-hmm. We say that, but we still got every year.
Right.
What do you remember about this Steiner recliner being banned?
Well, that was the thing, right? You took away his weapons, right? That was the story. Yep. You take away the things that could... Now you take away his chance of winning or being a champion or being victorious. So that was, I thought it was creative. It's these things you're trying to do, and they still do it to this day. You take away somebody's finishing move or their what they're known for, their maneuvers.
It's a different shift of kind of the title swapping onto various people here when this happens. All right, so you ready for this? Lance Storm, July 18th on Nitro. defeated Mike Awesome in a tournament final for the vacated title. Storm unofficially renamed the title to the WCW Canadian Heavyweight Championship. Aiden, now we're talking about Lance Storm.
Right.
Yourself, Lance Storm. Others are coming in the title picture now.
Right. Now it's myself. Shane Douglas is in there, I believe. And this is where, and you talked about it on the last episode, this is where there starts to get a little bit of story behind it again, like old school U.S. Championship when Lance turned it over and made it the Canadian, that was the thing to build on. So this was an opportunity, and this is all Vince Russo.
Yeah.
But so the ironic part is, and this is where I probably, somebody go, oh, DeMott doesn't know. I do know. But who could Lance beat? Who is it more conceivable for him to beat? Mike Awesome or Scott Steiner? There's the thing with the belt and the vacating and all the stuff. And now it's Lance and
he's a heel, man.
Yeah.
He's that Canadian guy, U.S. This is a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Professional wrestling, but his own spin on it.
Yeah. And here's the thing, looking back at it for all these years, boy, if we couldn't get that story right, we really sucked. It was built in, man. If you couldn't get that right, you sucked.
The ball does get dropped on this whole Canadian or other country bad guy thing every now and then, but not by Lance Storm, because he rode this one out. Yeah. And even in WWF, he did this, right? Yeah. I mean, and he was good at it. Him and other Canadians in history of wrestling have been great at this.
Yes.
So Lance Storm holds the title for 66 days. A house show is set up in Amarillo, Texas. Terry Funk comes up with the win. This title change is not recognized by WCW historically then, but it is recognized by WWE. He only holds it for a day.
Yeah.
The following night, this is a little bit of a tour, Texas, Lubbock, Texas, the following night. Another house show, Lance Storm gets it back.
Yeah. But
Terry Funk gets this night, man, at home.
But there's a lot of things that we'll talk about, and you're a great historian of this business, and you remember things and you can recall it and you speak well of it. And me, sometimes I listen and that's what reminds me of where I was or what was happening. But that night I remember Terry Funk, hometown, he was in, Terry Funk, forget it. If I start talking about him, we'll never get to the end of this subject. But what a great time in his town. He rolled out the red carpet for everybody. Everybody felt welcome. The arena was live and everything. And it was
over was Terry Funk there?
Oh, Jesus Christmas. I believe that Moses was sitting ringside. That's how over he was. Like, everybody came out of the woodwork. He had people that were sharing stories with him from childhood memories that were there showing up. And every son of a gun in the place had a dip in his mouth when he was talking to you. And it was just a good yeehaw night. And you had fun that night wrestling. Yeah. Great.
This is like wrestling.
Yeah.
This is what wrestling's about. This night is a good example of that. It takes you back to the good old days of wrestling.
The cruiserweights were acting like it was Christmas and they were at a party because everybody loved Terry. But he made everything was so relaxed in the back, and the guys were ready to go. Usually going, holy crap, I got to put another 25 minutes in tonight. I'm exhausted. That night, everybody was on the jazz, and that's because of Terry Funk.
And I appreciate the comment about the wrestling historian. I'm certainly just a fan.
Well,
some people actually do call themselves wrestling historian. I just consider myself a fan that likes wrestling.
But you're
no means.
But you're a fan. Yeah. You're not a subscriber. You're not, and I don't know how else to say it, but if everybody who's listening to this, as people get to know you as I have, there's a love for the business. There's a respect for the business. And that's why I say you're a historian, because you can recall it. You know where you were, like you said, since you're a young man, but you've always treated it respectfully. And that's what makes me gravitate to you. That's the side note.
And for me, and it's not just like, hey, I remember all these things when they happen, but I also have made an effort, like I said before when we talked about Terry Funk episodes ago with this title picture.
Yes.
You wouldn't know how great Terry Funk is if you just tried to come in right now and this point in time we're talking about in wrestling.
Right.
You hear stories and stuff. And for me, when I heard those stories and stuff, that's when I would go back to the old tapes, all the things you had to do then to see you really as a fan, if you were truly really big mega fan, you had to go back and make an effort to find these things. It's not like now, man.
And then
you had to make an effort to find some of this work that Terry Funk's done, find some of the work Dusty Rhodes. You had to do some digging. And I did that with Terry Funk long ago. And that's how I know he's more than just a guy that's portrayed with Mick Foley on WWF television.
Yes. And that's the thing for me as a fan of this business. Not only did I know who he is and appreciate what he's done prior to what we were doing, then I got to share the ring with him.
That's awesome.
Then I got to talk to him, and now everything I watched, heard the story behind the reasons why, I got the goosebumps. That's the best part for me about wrestling. Like, that's the thing that I wish everybody could appreciate. And I think that would change a lot of people's perspective on every one of us and what we do and how we do it and why we do it, is the things behind the scenes. But Terry Funk, he's up there, man. He walks on water for me and a lot of guys, because he's truly the guy behind the scenes. He's just as awesome as he is on camera. And he's just,
and he's a big part of wrestling history. He's had amazing matches.
Yeah.
But this, going back to what we're the title here, this is Wrestling 101. What a great night. I'm sure it was amazing. That is wrestling to me.
Yeah. And then, okay, so what do? The next night in Lubbock, go back, return match. We're on a tour of Texas.
Yeah. So we just talked about that. Bill, here comes Bill's big moment. Lance get the title back in Lubbock's. 36 days later, General I have a hard time calling you that.
God.
You were never, even when I watched you live then, you weren't that to me. I'll be honest with you. You were Hugh Morris to me.
That was the beauty of it. And I won't go into it because we'll go way off the subject, but remind me to get back to that, of why I was still Hugh Morris, because there's a story with that. But this is, General Hugh G. Rection.
So you talked about on a million, and I'm not and I'll be honest with you, it's that like this, I'm not a big fan of this gimmick.
No. Yeah.
I can see that's what wrestling was right then.
Yeah.
But this is your foot in the door. And I get that. You made the absolute best of it. You told the story of why it happened.
Yeah.
A million times. We've talked about it on this podcast. Yeah. You talked about it on another podcast recently that they reached out and you went on to. It's a story you can definitely find out there if you want to hear it in detail. But this is what you had. This is what you're handed, and you get this title at it. So in honor of your first championship here, which took place Milwaukee West. It was Halloween Havoc in in Nevada. You're in Paradise, Nevada.
Really?
Yep. In a handicap match. You defeated Lance Storm and Jim Duggan in a handicap match.
Right. That was at the MGM. That was in Vegas.
Yep.
Yeah. We can go into the history of Team Canada, how Duggan became part of that, because he was Mr. USA, right? But that was the night, and they wanted me to take it, but they wanted me to take it on Jim. And so I gave him the safety belt moonsault and made sure he was in a little closer, so I would just hit him with my head. Nonetheless, that was the night in Vegas where I became champion.
A couple different things are going on in wrestling. This is the same week time period where Bret Hart announces his retirement. And also, because Vince McMahon's mustache, a Twitter fan of ours, he sent me over the Dave Meltzer review of the match if you'd like to hear it.
It's not even 1 point. I'd love to hear it. What is it?
We'll get into that, but So Bret Hart retires, and like this is the same week.
Right.
Also, this same week, I read an article from Dave Meltzer talking about how he didn't think the WWF purchasing WCW would happen.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, Vince McMahon's. I've got it on my phone here. I'll go through this match.
I love Vince McMahon's mustache.
He wanted to get your reaction, I'm sure. Okay, so Captain Rection beat Jim Duggan and Lance Storm to win the WCW US title. Duggan, of course, this is the recap here from Dave Meltzer. Duggan, of course, looked hideous. Storm was awesome and one of the few guys on the show that looked major league. Rection can only do so much. Match was going along okay until the ref took the most comical bump of the afternoon and the match fell apart. Fans booed like crazy. Duggan hit Rection with a rare pile driver. Skipper ran down with a 2x4, but Major Guns hit him with the Canadian flag. Storm yelled at her. She responded by trying to pull his pants down. Really? He got mad about this since there was a match going on, and they got into an argument. In the ring, Duggan swung the 2x4 high above Rection's head, but Rection ducked anyway. He then KO'd Duggan, hit the moonsault, and pinned Duggan. Crowd at least went bonkers for the finish. Storm was disgusted and marched off to the back. They really made a big deal about the finish with Rection hugging the title and the rest of MIA squeezing Major Gun's ass under the disguise of lifting her up in the celebratory manner. 1 star.
Hey, man, I cherish that star.
That Duggan certainly didn't come close to hitting you, though. He's right.
No.
He took care of you. He wasn't going to hit you with that 2x4.
Yeah. And in turn, I didn't hit him with the moonsault.
Yeah, I would duck anyway, too, if somebody was swinging a damn 2x4.
Hey, I've been hit. He's hit me with that damn thing. I'm ducking even if he acts like he's swinging it.
That's what I thought when I read that before we got on the air, and I had an even harder laugh out loud when he had to throw in the celebratory bullshit. I don't know. I had anything to do with the review of the match, but damn it, he had to squeeze it in there before he dropped the 1 star.
I think I had 2 stars because the crowd went bonkers, but then with the whole Major Guns thing, it dropped me a star.
He did say the crowd went bonkers for the finish with you. Then he followed it up with the insult of the celebration and 1 star. But that's a decent summary of the match, though. There was a lot of moving pieces because Lance Storm was a part of the picture.
Yeah.
Lance Storm and you are going to go on and do things here.
Yeah.
Obviously. He's not going to admit he's not going to take the pin tonight.
Right.
What do you remember about this match? How awesome was this, Bill?
So this in Vegas, what happened was, I'm going to ask, is the next day we're in Irvine, California? Is that when this takes place now?
Okay, I see you're in California the next day. I can't confirm where.
If I have the timeline right, if I've been hit in the head a few times, but that's what it is. At that time I had a lot of issues with my head from concussions and losing my eyesight and things like that. When I really got going, I would lose my vision completely. It'd be like a white sheet. So when we got on the plane, I didn't realize we were on a plane. I didn't realize we were in California. I didn't realize I won the championship the next day. And Chavo,
oh God,
as he always does, Chavo's always taking care of me, and he made sure I got to my room because clearly there was something wrong. And I got my bell rung again. But I just enjoyed the whole thing with Lance. So this was a small part of it in the kind of the beginning-ish kind of stuff. But everything about this, what we're going to talk about, is the best part of WCW to me. So, but this was the point, I think, when, like, you asked me how it felt. Until the next day, I had no clue. I had no clue. I was just getting on a plane to get to another show. That was the only mentality I had.
Wow. That's not exactly a glorious answer to the question there, Bill, but we'll take it.
but it's an honest,
no, man,
I think the glorious answer is coming up, though, if I remember correctly.
When have you watched this match recently at all?
The one with Duggan and Lance?
Yeah.
No.
This might be something you got to show Billy Jr. one day.
I think he goes on and looks. I don't really watch my stuff. 30 plus years, I think I may have watched one or two matches back just to see if I felt what I felt in the ring afterwards, but
the reaction was real, though, from you winning this title. It appeared to be very meaningful.
It was important to me. It was, a lot of people think this is just a bunch of hogwash and who cares. And, you hear a lot of the stories of the guys saying, big deal. Now it's another 20 pounds in my bag I got to carry and take it out at the airport and, go through security, all that stuff. It meant a lot to me after 7 years or just under 7 years at that time of just getting an opportunity to be on the pay-per-views featured, not just another match, featured and getting in. And the storyline that was laid out was what really grabbed me, and it grabbed Lance. So I was working with a guy who was just as invested and just as excited about this opportunity as I was. So when I had that belt, that was as real as it gets. That was that thing of like, son of a gun, I did it. Like everywhere else I'd ever wrestled, I was a champion. And I'm not saying I should be, but I always had the opportunity. I made the best of those situations. And then so when it happened in WCW, especially with all the other things that were going on, this was like that. Oh, I'm so glad I stuck this out,
There were a few of you here that still appeared to be, this is towards the end of WCW.
Yeah.
There is a few of you here that still seem to be pretty emotionally invested.
There was a good group of guys that were invested. And there was such a strong group of young cats, power plant guys that were starting to get work and get in the rub of working with guys and stuff that were really invested in what was going on, because I think there was more than a handful, but a handful of us that truly believed that we could stay in business here. We had no control over what was going to happen, but we were going to do our best to make sure that if it wasn't gone tomorrow, we were going to be a part of it.
Okay, so this is a title reign of 2 weeks when you had this. Then the next story, Lance Storm's story is obviously sticking around here.
Yep.
We talked about that. You go over to London, England, where Lance Storm picks up the championship. Do you remember this?
Yeah, that was the same night I became tag team champion.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yes, Lance and I went out there, easy 20 minutes, if not more. I remember that night, the crowd was awesome. I mean, we had full houses, so we were doing great business in there. We were a featured story on that loop.
How cool is that, Bill? You're international now as the champion.
So awesome. So freaking cool. Same thing when we were in Australia and all that stuff. It was just like, that's what you didn't get into the business for that. But when that was a perk and when that became a thing, and now, you're standing next to Hogan and storylines and Page and these guys and doing all these things. And when people know who you are, I don't care what ego you have or don't have or how humble you try to be. When people are chanting for you and buying your stuff, your head gets big and you go, hot damn, I never want this to end. It was awesome, dude. Awesome. It's the equivalent of seeing your kids being born. It's freaking awesome.
Well, 2 weeks go by again. You defeat Lance Storm at Mayhem in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on November 26th. You got a couple weeks here going on, a couple months here going on with this Lance Storm thing. And we're about to move on past it. So what do you want to talk about from the Lance Storm? Obviously, what comes next is Shane Douglas, but how fun was this working with Lance Storm for a couple months?
So that's it. On TV, everybody thought Lance and I were together for a couple of months. Lance and I ran together for almost 12 months. We were given a solid part of every house show. We got to know each other very well, in and out of the ring. But to me, it was just two guys that really wanted to be there. And like when our title thing kind of faded away, we were working on every live event because it was one of those things that gelled. And the people at that point, thank goodness, the people didn't need to see either one of us have a championship. They wanted to see the fight, right? USA and America. And they wanted to see, Erection and Storm and Hugh Morris and Storm and things like that. So it was great. And even when we got away from that stuff on TV, we were still together for such a long time. And funny. So here's the funny story. When they needed us to do something on TV again down the road, Arn Anderson was the agent, and Arn came to us in a little bit of a panic because this time the company's going under. Everybody's trying to keep their job. And Arn had a little bit of a panic thing going, listen, they got you and Lance doing this thing. And if I can get you guys together and let's figure this out. And Lance and I are looking at each other like, is he kidding? What, like, why is he freaking out? Like, I don't know. Can you guys do something together? Do you guys think you make something? And the funny part was Lance goes, yeah, I'm sure we could work something out. And Arn left in a panic, like trusting us to try to be professionals that night and try to have a good match. Well, we've been running together for so long, but it was like in Arn's mind, he forgot that because of the situation surrounding the company. But to Lance and I, we looked at each other laughing, and usually you'd panic if a veteran like Arn Anderson's a little bit like, Jesus, is this going to come out all right? Usually somebody else would panic, but Lance and I had danced together for so long that it was just, you could do it in your sleep. But as a person, I appreciated him as a dad, and as a worker. And his knowledge was like, he really truly loved what he does. He was good at it. That's why he became a trainer after and a coach, because he had so much knowledge to pass on. But the highlight of my WCW career was all my time with Lance Storm.
That's meaningful. First of all, love Arn Anderson, by the way.
Oh, listen.
Freaking love Arn Anderson and his work. What was it like putting matches together with Lance Storm? Talk to us about that. How much effort went into it? Was this natural? I mean, like what was it like working with all these months that went by with him?
There wasn't, to me, the best way to say it, there wasn't a lot of hard work putting into it. It was basically, let's get to know each other. As we got to know each other, let's add fuel to the fire. But for me, and I say this with all honesty, I would listen 75% and offer 25%. Because that's how good to me Lance is. And because I trusted Lance, Lance never went into business for himself. And never, he never made it about him. Like I said, we were both on the same page with this story and the opportunity and where we could go with it. So to me, it was a very easy process to start. It was always easy to go back to. Every time I know that I'd be working with Lance, I came to work ready and knowing that nothing could kill the mood. Although one night, I want everybody to listen to this part. One night at a live event, Lance Storm hit me with a super kick that knocked me into next week. And he felt awful. Because anybody who's ever worked with Lance Storm or knows his work, Lance Storm wouldn't hurt you. He was so good at what he did, he never touched you. And you got to dance with him that way. Well, we were in a live event. Like I said, we did this for so long. We just had fun. Whatever happened, happened. Well, one night it was just, we were that much closer and boom. And he got me smack, bam, down I went. And it was like oh my God. Because he knew, he felt it in his foot and his leg that he just kicked my head off. You know what I mean? That's what a pro he is. In the year we ran together, he touched me one time. And I don't mean he touched me like he never punched me, never kicked me, never, glommed on me and stuff like that. This was the one time it came out of nowhere like a cannon. the one I never would have expected. Like, you punch me in the face all day long. As long as I see it coming, I'm golden. Well, he caught me with that foot, and it was like and he couldn't have apologized less than 1 million times. And to this day, if I see him, I go, remember that time he kicked me? And he goes, oh. But Lance is a dream opponent for anyone. I'll say it publicly. I've said it to him. I'll say it every time I talk to someone about Lance Storm. The best part of my WCW career.
Sounds like you're saying thank you, Lance Storm.
Thank you, Lance. Hey, I've told Lance thank you on many occasions. I had a lot of head trauma and brain things going on. And Lance was one of those guys that really, he could have done things differently, but he did business, and Lance kept me alive in the storyline a lot more times than I think he'd ever admit.
And he didn't use a thigh slap.
And he never slapped his leg.
That's a really cool moment there. All jokes aside, I mean, that's why we do this podcast. Yeah. As we get into the faction, another episode later, we'll talk about the story itself more. Obviously, this episode's about the title.
Yes.
But it's amazing to take a moment and recognize Lance Storm.
Yeah, big fan.
Okay, so Bill, 49-day reign. Rolling back into Indianapolis, Indiana. Oh, if you're not, those listening don't know, that's where I live. Okay, so January 14th, 2001, Shane Douglas, first blood chain match.
Yep.
Talk to us about this match.
I think I could be wrong if someone watches it back. I thought this was a pretty good match for what it was. You know, the chain.
I don't have Meltzer's ratings in front of me, but yeah,
I'm sure it's got to at least equal to 1. But I had a lot of fun with Shane, and that was one of those things. Unfortunately, you had 2 guys, and I was a big fan. If there's a chain involved and there's physicality with objects and all that stuff, then I'm sorry, you've got to hit me. I'm not gonna, pussyfoot around it and baby it and let's go, let's swing for the fences. I had a lot of fun with Shane. I thought I had good chemistry with Shane. Another guy I got to dance with for a lot of time. I thought it was a good match.
Another guy that doesn't get talked about enough, probably. I mean, he was really freaking good, man. Yeah,
he, unfortunately, he's like everybody else, right? Everybody's got their certain guys that don't like him and stuff, and that's usually all we ever hear. We don't hear the good things. We just hear the gossip and the. But yeah, I had a good time with Shane.
And there was no screwdriver stabbed to the head.
No, he left the cheese grater at home.
So, Bill, that is your time here. We're getting really close to wrapping up this. We'll jump into WWF next week and wrap it all up.
Okay.
But Shane Douglas holds the title for 3 weeks. Rick Steiner gets it from him on Nitro on February 5th.
And
so Rick Steiner now.
Rick is in. And again, at that time, I know we're just doing time of the championship, but in that time, all these guys were involved in some way, shape, or form. It was much like we said, Lex, Dallas, Bret, back to Dallas. But so we were doing that at that time, but we were all involved in some little bit of a story within it, so, but this was my exit from the U.S. Championship. Yeah.
Yep. And it's really summing up here, the exit of the U.S. Championship for WCW, because Rick Steiner holds this thing for 41 days. Then we come to what was known as Greed, right? This took place on March 18th, 2001. This is the last pay-per-view, man. This is it.
Yeah.
Booker T gets the title. What do you remember about Booker T winning this title and this night? Greed is the last pay-per-view.
Well,
WCW.
It goes back to look who's in charge. But if you were going out, and this is again my opinion and recall from it, this was the time for the guys that have hung in there and done their thing for so long and proved themselves. And I think that's why Booker became the last face of WCW. It's just one of those things, like, not a lot of it mattered anymore. We were going down. We knew we were going down. They made a point of telling us every night. AOL, Coca-Cola, this one, that one, Ted's back in. Eric's going to buy it. Everybody was holding on to Eric was going to buy it. And so there was trying to make it a little less pressure. But at the time, none of it really mattered. You were just and it really showed in the back and production and everything. We were just putting on shows to put on shows. But I think Booker was the right choice, as proven in time in history. He was the right choice to be the face of WCW. But to the point of the US thing.
Talk about WCW, and you think of like a couple people that you think of when you hear WCW. Talked about Kevin Nash, talk about Bill Goldberg, Ric Flair. Booker T's one of them.
Booker T Booker T is one of them. Another guy
that night.
Which night?
Agreed. This night. What did you guys know this night? Obviously, 5 days later, I believe, was the official purchase
in Panama City. That's when Panama City was, right? Right after that.
Yeah, because this one was in Jacksonville, I believe.
Yeah, we didn't know. We still were being told the same thing. And then everybody speculating because everybody had a different relationship with this one or a secretary or a girl in the office, and they were telling things. But we still didn't know. We knew it was coming. And then half the guys, wrestling mentality go, it's the same as everything else. It's a big work. But some people were holding on to Eric was buying the company and things were going to try to stay status quo. Yeah. A lot of guys didn't, like I said, and we've talked about this in the past going into that night, a lot of guys didn't care. They were getting paid guaranteed money. You can go to business all you want. You owe me. But then there were guys still fighting the fight. Booker was one of them.
There was no more status quo at this point in time, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a clear who shivs a get every night when you showed up. I'm working. I don't like it. I ain't working. What are you going to do? The company's going out. You're going to fire. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Wrapping up this episode here, we have one other listener question we'll get to, but you are part of this titles last year in WCW. Really, after that, this title, and we'll talk about it, and we will cover up a lot of ground pretty quickly as we sum up this. We'll have one more episode about this, and we'll cover 20 years.
Yeah,
it's not. We'll get that done in an episode.
Yeah.
So far, we've really gone through a lot here with this title, but you were a part of the end of this, man.
Yeah,
the title's not quite what it was then. It's not quite what it was before, maybe. But how cool is it knowing that you're part of that?
I went, and I'm a big fan of. I always say doing my homework, and it's a shame I didn't do it earlier, but when I became part of that picture for the United States Championship, I went and looked back at everybody who ever held that title. And we've talked about everybody prior to me previous to me that's held that title. And here's the thing. And if you don't know I'm a fan after this statement, you'll never believe that I'm a fan of this business. I'm holding the same championship belt as Dusty Rhodes, as Harley Race, as Ricky Steamboat, as Ric Flair, as everybody we've mentioned. I watched the Magnum TA Dark Side of the Ring thing 7 times because every time I watched it, I heard something different and I learned something else. These were the guys that were the groundbreakers. Harley Race, come on, man, Harley Race. And then for me to even be included in the history of it, and I'll tell you how much a fan I am. I took a screenshot on the WWE website when they list every United States champion. And I'm so bothered that it's not, and I think they changed it to Hugh Morris instead of General Erection but they kept it for a while. It was General Erection. And I was so proud of that. Just to be in that picture of, and where a lot of people go, oh, that's a bunch of nonsense. It really doesn't mean anything. Yes, it did. It meant a lot to me. It meant the world to me to be trusted, to be part of that history. And I'll say that till the day I die. It meant so much to me to have that opportunity and to be trusted. And then to have the dance partner that I had in Lance Storm. And then working with Scotty Steiner and Rick Steiner and Shane and all the guys I got to work with during those runs is unbelievable. And it meant the world. So That's like, no one can ever take that away from me. I was part of that.
And we've shared so many moments as we've gone through all these names, and we've taken the time to stop on all these individuals, not near enough time they deserve.
Right.
But we have taken the time to stop and just take it all in. It's a lot to take in. Like you just said, when you really think about it, it's a hell of a lot to take in, and it's incredible.
You look at that thing, like my name's on the same list as Roddy Piper. My name's on, on the same list as all these guys. And as the list started to get to the later years where I got to not only admire them, I got to work with them throughout the rest of my career. I sat next to Dusty Rhodes in the same office for 6 years. We spent nights together talking about these things, and so it means a lot to people. When you can share that with people that appreciate it, it's awesome. But what a list, and take myself out of it now. What a list of talent on the United States Championship list. What a list of talent.
I don't know how else to finish up that part of it. Incredibly well said. It's like I said, we'll get to one listener question here, and next week we'll finish up the U.S. title. But well done, Bill, with that title reign. And looking back at it, it's, you this question that we're going to ask about here kind of ties into what I was going to say, but I'll just say the question. It's from Tristan Weiss on Twitter. He wants to know what your feelings are on the comments Kenny Omega recently said about people. So this is what happened here. The critics that think Kenny Omega's wrestling style is too dangerous, he said, shut the fuck up.
Right.
This was an interview with SI. And what Tristan's asking here is, should Kenny Omega even take the time to comment back on things like this?
No. His body of work speaks for itself. What he's done and what he does now speaks for itself. And why do we put so much stock in people's opinions? And that's the thing that I talked about, being a fan. They're not fans of the business. They're not fans of what he does. Now, do I agree with a lot of it? Who am I to say, because of the things I did? Barbed wire bats and glass cages and, barbed wire cages and lighting myself on fire. So the things these cats are doing is just the evolution of what we did. But I don't think, because I think he's better than that. One, I think Kenny's better than that. And once you validate that phrase, that comment, that opens a can of worms for everybody else to jump on board. So it's a hard thing to do. I've become very good at it. I ignore that stuff, but somebody who makes that comment isn't watching for the right reasons. So I don't think Kenny has to justify anything he does. I think it stinks that we get baited in as grown men to instantly just cuss people out, screw off and all that stuff. It's not who you are, but it's emotionally, that's what happens at the time. But after a while, you get sick of this social media stuff. So I don't down him for his reaction. I just, as an old fart, I would say, don't put it over, man. Don't give them the time of day. They'll go away because they got no reaction.
I'm not on the level of you or Kenny Omega, but what I have been doing is podcasting for over 15 years now. I've been associated or involved with well over 50 million podcasts, download, listens, whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of that in this as well. I get it today for the comments I say about things. I've gotten it for the comments I said about sports and all the other podcasts I've been doing for 15 years. I really just tried to not pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Even stuff I've done on TV. I know they let me on TV. Isn't that crazy, Bill?
No, it's
I try not to let it get to me or even acknowledge it. It's hard. I get it, but it really just adds more fuel to the fire, and it doesn't help anything.
Yeah. It's so hard because you're going, dude, have you not watched what I'm doing? Did you not appreciate anything I've done? Or is that why you watched it, to tear me down? Same as like you said with podcasting, like, why tune in if all you're going to do is wait for a moment to everything's wrestling to me, to get yourself over? You're not in it for the right reasons. But as human beings, as grown men or grown women, you can only take so much because, and to me, that just shows his passion and where his heart is. Because some people go, oh, if you don't answer, you really don't care. No, that's not the case at all. But then if he answers, that makes him a schmuck, right? So we're really put in a bad position. But we didn't know that. For me, we didn't have this internet problem when I was, the first half of my career and guys like that. But these guys now,
it's different now. It's out there a lot.
Yeah, these guys now, they're put out on Jump Street 24 hours a day. So his reaction is justified. The question, I think, is the statement was ridiculous. And after what, you can only take so much. So I guess every once in a while you got to shut somebody down, and whatever happens, happens.
I'll end it with this. I need a Kenny Omega WWE run before it's done.
I told you, I think we talked about it. I'm sure we'll talk about it time and time again. I believe that's where, when the time comes for him to finish off, I'm pretty sure it'll be in Japan, but he needs a WWE run.
That'll never end. It'll never end all the haters, but it will do work.
Oh yeah, they'll come out of the woodwork. Somebody will hate it, or he'll. Yeah. You can't win,
Bill. You can't win, Bill. But we did win on this episode. Yes. I feel like, man, my heart feels warm, and it was another great night to share with you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was one that really made me feel like you said, your heart is warm. Like, this is the one, and I'll probably, I know by tomorrow I'm going to shoot Lance a tweet or something, and I know the answer he'll give me. And I'll give you the heads up. I'll tell you right now, and I'll tell everybody right now who's listening. Tomorrow, which is Friday, right? When you hear this, it'll be Friday the 14th. Is that fair to say?
When
tomorrow,
this,
the day after the day after we shoot this will be Friday the 14th.
Yep, and this will come out on Wednesday.
Whenever it comes out, you will see that I tweeted Lance, and he will have a sarcastic Canadian comeback for me. But that's how much I think of him. So when us talking about this at the end really just brought all that stuff up again. He always makes me feel good when I get to talk about that part of my career with him, because it truly was a good time with there was no drama. There was no guessing anything. And I think that was the hardest part of ending WCW for me, because I was in the pocket of, I was in Shangri-La, man. Everything was just working. It all, after 6.5, 7 years, it finally started to click. And it was all gone. But you mentioned Lance, and I could just talk forever. Utmost respect for that man.
Absolutely. So we'll get our plugs and we'll get out of here.
Yes.
Of course, you can check out all the episodes on any major podcast platform, but we encourage you to check out the website, BillDeMott.com. We've got all the episodes on there. We've got the latest merchandise that we've put out. It's the Bill DeMott Experience t-shirt. And of course, all the proceeds go to the foundation, which you can actually find a link to the foundation website on there as well. So every episode you hear us talk about the foundation. Well, if you want to learn more about it, see more about it, you can now do so off our website. Pick up the t-shirt. All the proceeds that come from that will go to the foundation. And of course, we have, for contact, I'm on Twitter, Podcast Father. You're Bill DeMott on everything. I think I'm Podcast Father on everything too.
Yep.
Also have the email, BillDeMottPod@gmail.com, I believe it is. Yeah, it's BillDeMottPod@gmail.com. So if you want to reach out, you don't have social media, or you don't want to tweet on social media, hey, we'll take an email too. But we really do appreciate you listening. Yes. We have a hell of a good time doing this every week.
Great questions every week from our fan base that's building by the week. Great job on the website, and thank you so much for adding the foundation stuff on there. It looks amazing. Get the merchandise. Tune in. We haven't even started to find our groove yet, you and I, and this thing is running so smooth, and we're building such good momentum. Just appreciate it every week, and thank you to everyone, and keep tuning in.
Absolutely. Like I announced this week, we passed the 100K on the listens. That's just on the podcast platform.
That's awesome.
So yeah, appreciate it completely. And we'll keep trying to deliver the best content that we can. And we'll talk about whatever we want in the meantime. We'll talk about Bill DeMott's massive young teenage son that he has that has size 16 shoes. We'll talk about whatever we want. So,
stupid
Bill,
Nike,
I'm happy
man.
to do that with you, man.
Thank you, man. It's always a pleasure. I always tell you, it's truly great. And I got to let you know that every week, it's truly the best part of my week. And I enjoy it. And thank you. Thank you for bringing me in to your world. And I'm having a lot of fun.
I could say the same to you. Thanks for bringing me into your experience. And everybody else going along with experience with us. Until next week, keep being you and keep being great.